Hi everyone, today I'm making a video about Samhain or Halloween. It's the witches' Halloween. It's a holiday which is so much older than Halloween, where Halloween's origins came from. I'm going to be explaining some ways that the ancient people celebrated Samhain so that you guys can have inspiration for your celebrations too. I'll be sharing some ways the ancient people celebrated Samhain, as well as the history of Samhain, and finally some other magical ways to celebrate it that are more modern. Samhain is the holiday that is celebrated from the 31st of October to the 1st of November. It marks the final harvest of the year and the end of the growing season and the start of winter. The first written mention of Samhain was in the 9th century, year 800 AD. However, Samhain is much older than this. It was celebrated by the ancient Celts possibly as far back as 2,500 years ago, and potentially even up to 5,000 years ago. Different sources have different theories, so please do more research. This is just what I have learnt from my own research. With that said, while I was trying to figure out the origins of Samhain, I came to this conclusion. There is evidence from between 3,350 BC to 2,800 BC of people in Ireland honouring the dead on Samhain every single year. The evidence for this is a structure called the Mound of the Hostages. This is an ancient passage tomb, and this tomb is located on the hill of Tara in Tara Screen Valley in County Meath, Leinster, Ireland. There are also many other similar structures to this. So this specific tomb could be up to 5,000 years old. The doorway to the passage tomb is framed with standing stones, and these stones are laid out in such a way that on Samhain morning every year on the 1st of November, the tomb inside is illuminated with the sun, which is the evidence of the tomb being connected to the celebration of Samhain. It may be illuminated for a few days around this time. I found different accounts on different websites. Many people believe the origin of Samhain to be Celtic pagan. However, Celts practiced ancient Celtic paganism approximately 2,500 years ago. As there were megalithic big stone sites across Neolithic Ireland, such as the Mound of the Hostages, this suggests that the origin of Samhain is much older and was celebrated before the Celts arrived. There is evidence of feasts held at these megalithic sites, yet little to no evidence of domestic use. This implies people gathered there just to celebrate. As each site was created to allow the sun or moon to shine directly into the structure on certain days of the year, this shows which monument was created for different holidays, giving insight into how each festival was celebrated. On the Hill of Tara is the oldest of these structures to still exist, the Mound of the Hostages, as I mentioned earlier. And the Mound of the Hostages, as I said, is aligned to Samhain. Archaeologists have found the remains of feasts and big bonfires around the site. Therefore, the ancient way to celebrate Samhain could have been to have a feast and a fire with the dead. You can honour this in modern society by visiting the graves of lost loved ones, bringing food and friends with you. You can light a candle and leave out your favourite food as an offering, as well as eating some food yourself and with your friends. The tradition of feasting with the dead has also been practiced on Samhain in many parts of the modern world, in something called a dumb supper. There are several versions of a dumb supper and the origins are unknown, but it may have naturally evolved from ancient traditions of feasting by tombs. One way of hosting a dumb supper is essentially just having a meal with the dead. Casually, this would just consist of hosting a dinner with guests while also leaving an empty seat with a plate of food for the spirit. You can invite specific spirits, or you can just use it to honor your ancestors. You and your guests can write letters to lost loved ones or to your ancestors. If you wanted to do this meal as a dedicated ritual, it requires silence. You and your guests must not speak the entire time, from the moment they arrive to the moment they leave. Guests must arrive before midnight. Food must be served just before midnight so that you can begin eating at midnight. Cleanse the dining room and the kitchen before the ritual. The meal for the dead must be served at the head of the table, and no one should sit opposite except for the host. Everyone should acknowledge the head of the table in their own way, and make sure you serve the head of the table first. Use candlelight and no electronics during the ritual. You can also use the candlelight flames to burn your letters after writing them. You can write out a ritual plan for your guests, which will help with not talking during the ritual, and then you can point it out so they know what to do at each stage of the dinner. I found a really good ritual plan for a dumb supper on theghostinmymachine.com. So if you need a ritual plan, I really recommend checking out that website. That's where I got most of this information about the dumb supper. Another dumb supper ritual has romantic divination at the heart of it. It's almost exactly the same as the meal with the dead, except instead of inviting your ancestors or your lost loved ones, you invite the spirit of your future partner. And in this specific divination meal, you replace the letter writing with spirit sensing. You look towards the head of the table so you can see if you can sense or see a spirit. Watch and wait, and just keep watching and waiting because it might take a while. If you see or sense a spirit enter the room and sit at the head of the table, make note of anything you observe about them, their appearance, how you feel, their energy and personality, any signs and symbols associated with them. If you see nothing or something scary, this could be a warning about a potential future relationship or partner. Or it could also mean that it's not foreseen for you to have a partner if you carry on your current life journey the way you're living. Remember, divination is always a possible future, so it can always be changed. It's just telling you the future based on your current situation, but anyone can change their future. Some traditions of a dumb supper also require doing everything backwards, starting with dessert and ending with appetizers. It can also include turning the chairs away from the table. This tradition can also be adapted for any form of divination. Ask a question and see if the spirit you invited will show you the answer. It is believed that the veil between the spirit world and the human world would be gone, or at least at its thinnest, on Samhain. And this is why it's easier to connect with the spiritual realm at this time, making divination more accurate. Divination used by druids and others with the second sight include pricking an egg and letting it drip into a glass of clear water, then reading the messages in the shapes of the egg. Reading dancing hazelnuts held over a fire. I think this one was for romantic divination. You put 2 hazelnuts on to represent you and your partner. Casting sticks, bones or stones. Recognizing omens such as an animal you notice as you embark on a new journey. Observing birds and their flight patterns, which all had different meanings. There's also one where the druids would boil an animal shoulder blade and read the marks and the holes in the bone, interpreting the meaning of dreams. And they even made dreams like a ritual, so people would fast before sleeping. They might include an animal sacrifice, sleeping in the hide of a sacred animal. Although I have seen some people say that a lot of information on druids would have said that they sacrificed animals because the Romans were trying to portray them as barbaric. So take that as you will. More divination, here we go. Some other divination that the druids and those with second sight would do are psychic. They had psychic abilities, so they would receive cryptic visions, feelings in the body as a sign of something. For example, itchy or hot ears means someone's talking about you. An itchy mouth means you might be kissed soon. Samhain is a good time for any form of divination. Tarot, oracle, scrying, runes, etc. The belief that the veil between worlds is lifted and the dead walk amongst the living is also the reason behind costumes. As well as being a time to connect with desirable and agreeable spirits, malevolent spirits also walked the earth. To blend in or scare away these spirits, spooky costumes were used. Ancient Celts also used to dress as animals and monsters, so the Sidhe, that's the Fae or fairies, all kinds of fairy creatures like goblins, redcaps, etc. So the ancient Celts would dress as animals and monsters so the Sidhe would not be tempted to kidnap them. They also left offerings out for the Sidhe. People would also leave out offerings to appease wandering spirits, and other people in costume may have received offerings on behalf of the spirits, which is a lot like our current form of trick-or-treating. A tradition which has existed in parts of Britain and Ireland since the Middle Ages involved going door to door in costume and performing short scenes or plays in exchange for food or drink. There are also a lot more traditions of early types of trick-or-treating than I have mentioned here. At first it was leaving treats to honour the dead in order to avoid tricks, and by the 16th to the 19th century in Scotland and Ireland, it had developed into going house to house in costume, reciting verses in exchange for treats and sometimes warning of misfortune if they were not welcomed. It is unclear if ancient traditions directly linked to modern practices or if they evolved from each other. Either way, it's amazing to see the similarities. Fire was also used as a form of protection in the Middle Ages. Personal bonfires nearer to farms were used to protect families from fairies and witches and the Sidhe. People also used to make jack-o'-lanterns out of turnips before the tradition became pumpkins, and this was also a form of protection. In the 17th century, a night watchman could have been known as a Jack of the Lantern because people would call men Jack, just like, look at that old Jack. And so a Jack of the Lantern would have been a night watchman. There is also an Irish myth about a man called Stingy Jack who was left to roam the earth after death with a coal in a turnip as a lantern, which could have inspired the name. It is believed that people carved scary faces to frighten away unwanted spirits and happy faces to attract good ones. Some people also light a candle in the window to guide lost souls. Using candles, fire and jack-o'-lanterns is an ancient Samhain tradition. The legend of Stingy Jack is believed by some to have originated in the early 1600s. He was a man who tricked the devil and ended up not being allowed into heaven or hell. Renditions of this tale were published in 1836 in the Dublin Penny Journal and in 1851 in a poem by Hercules Ellis. As this tale has been thought of as a potential origin for jack-o'-lanterns, it also suggests that telling ghost or spooky stories for Samhain has been done since at least the 1600s. However, ancestor worship has been prevalent since the Neolithic time, the evidence of which is the megalithic structures such as the Mound of the Hostages. This leads me to believe that tales of ancestor spirits may also have been shared amongst people as an early form of ghost stories. This is just a theory, as no one truly knows what happened during the Samhain celebrations of the Neolithic people. In 1500 BC, around 3,500 years ago, in ancient Babylon, a tablet was made. This tablet is thought to be the possible earliest depiction of a ghost. Irving Finkel, the author of The First Ghosts, Most Ancient of Legacies, states that the ghostly image is only visible under a light and if viewed from above. He believes the tablet portrays detailed instructions on getting rid of ghosts, which, to put it simply, advises the reader to trap the ghost in a figurine. Finkel explains how there was a whole school of specialist magic, specifically for appeasing ghosts. This shows an ancient and in-depth belief in spirits and ghosts. And as ghost stories and death rituals can be found in ancient societies all over the world, it suggests that the belief in spirits is a normal part of the human experience. It may have been a Samhain tradition, but it was also practiced in many different belief systems. I personally believe that telling ghost stories or tales of our ancestors is an ancient Samhain tradition, as honoring the dead and knowledge of spiritual/ghost practices seems very prevalent in ancient cultures, in many different ancient cultures. I like to think we honor this in society today by watching scary movies around Samhain. Some people have even speculated that Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas is loosely based on Stingy Jack, the story I mentioned earlier. It's interesting to see how an old tradition of lighting a jack-o'-lantern is still inspiring society today. Irish immigrants brought the tradition with them to North America. This is why the staple food used for the lantern changed from turnips to pumpkins. Pumpkins were common in North America and much easier to make into lanterns. A lot of modern-day witches use pumpkins also for spells and rituals, as well as other seasonal vegetables and plants and herbs. Pumpkins and other types of gourds are typically used for abundance spells, apples for divination and love, rosemary for remembrance and cleansing, and even more. Rosemary can be used for so many things. Each plant helps to manifest something unique in a ritual. Some witches even collect graveyard dirt to use in spells, which is especially powerful at this time of year. Or you can bury your completed spell in an old graveyard, as long as you are respectful of the dead, as that's what Samhain is all about. An ancient ritual performed by the Celts on Samhain involved the entire village. The community would all extinguish their hearth fires and then ceremoniously relight them from a fire that was lit by the king's chief druid. Not much is known about ancient druid magic, or at least not much in comparison to how detailed their rituals would have been, as their beliefs, as I briefly mentioned earlier, their beliefs and education were erased when Romans brought Christianity to what is now the UK. So there's a lot of information about druids that's just lost from us, and a lot of history just gone. Thanks, Romans. As well as using seasonal items in rituals, you can also set up an altar with traditional Samhain items. Collecting items from natural areas near you is a good way to connect with the flora and plant life in your area. As Samhain is traditionally linked to ancestor worship, it can be good to set up an ancestor altar at this time of year, or you can put something on your main altar to honor your ancestors. You can do this by including photos of or items that belonged to lost loved ones, or if you know about your ancestral lineage, you can include items to represent that, or you can include family heirlooms or even bones if you have them. If you make an ancestor altar, it's the perfect place to sit in front of and commune with the dead / your ancestors. There are many ways to do this. You can invite a specific ancestor to join you and then do divination and ask them to show you a message from them. You can do a guided meditation specifically for connecting with ancestors or lost loved ones. If you feel comfortable and you know how to protect yourself, you could even do a Ouija board. Or if you want a similar experience to a Ouija board but you're too scared to try one, or you don't think you can protect yourself, you can get an app which is like a ghost radar app, and they're supposed to show you messages from ghosts. I don't know how accurate they are, but they are fun. I've done one before. I think the one I used is called Ghost Radar, but you could probably search that and you'll find something similar. Another good thing to try at this time of year is astral projection. This is because the spiritual realm is a lot easier to connect with. So to summarize the whole video, I'm going to give you a list of the things that you can do on Samhain. Visiting graves, bonfires and dancing, dumb suppers, feasting, divination, tarot / oracle cards, runes, Ouija boards, etc. Costumes to blend in with spirits, offerings to appease spirits, candles to guide lost spirits, performing for fun or treats or just as a spiritual offering, carving jack-o'-lanterns, magic ceremonies or rituals, ghost stories, scary movies, setting up a seasonal and/or ancestor altar, and communing with the dead. Are there any Samhain traditions that you can think of that I forgot? If so, let me know in the comments, and let me know what you're going to do for Samhain or Halloween, or if you're going to do anything from this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions, just let me know, and if you want more information on anything I've mentioned, let me know. I can make another video. Okay, bye bye. But also, firstly, look at this amazing place that I'm at. You can't see it very well because it's focused on my face, but how cool.